The following program may contain strong language and mature content. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everybody, happy Thursday, happy Friday, Junior. Look, when you become an adult, like like 40 plus, little things make you happy. Stuff like Friday or the thought of a Friday is just like extra hype and it's Friday is coming. You just get so excited, and that's how I'm feeling right now. This month's episode of NicoleDVick Live, and by the way, I am NicoleDVick, is actually very serious, very important. And so even though I'm hyped that it's, Friday Junior, this is really a time to have a very, very important and serious conversation. I don't know about you, but for me, the lives of Black women are so very important, primarily because, first and foremost, I am a Black woman. We have been left out of some very serious conversations that have a huge impact on our health. I have a professor when I was undergrad at USC, shout out to them, Dr. LaVonna Blair Lewis, and she would say, if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. Meaning, if you are not at the table having these conversations, giving your input, they talking about you, and they're going to make decisions about you that you don't know nothing about. So if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. And I'm saying today, we are reclaiming our seat at the table. We ain't on nobody's menu up in here in 2022. All right. So it's been 30 years since the HIV epidemic began, actually more than 30 years. Back in the early days, it was called GRID, and all of the efforts were focused on helping gay white men not get infected, help them get treatment, and all those great things. Now, the data has shifted, and we're going to see later some of the changes in the data. And in the work that I do professionally, we are taught to chase the data. What does the data say? Then we, move accordingly. But to me, the conversation has not shifted away from the original conversation that was had at the beginning of this epidemic. Today is National Women and Girls HIV Awareness Day. So we are going to bring some light, some, a magnifying glass, whatever we going to bring, we bringing it today to this specific issue. Okay. So Kwame, I don't know if you have that graphic that talks about what today is. The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, put it out as a reminder that we should be focused today on all of the issues surrounding women and girls that have HIV or AIDS in our communities. You'll see later what the numbers look like. And if you anything like me, when I see numbers that don't look right to me, I get a little mad, a little bit sad. And so we're going to deal with that. But let me bring Nomsa on, because I will talk myself into a tizzy on this particular issue. Come on, sis.
Hey.
Happy
Hey,
Friday.
hey.
Oh my God, happy Friday, Junior. I was telling them earlier, when you grown, little stuff like the prospect of Friday coming is like really exciting. Like, why is that? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm hanging in there.
See, I feel bad because you got your natural curls, and I done put on Pocahontas today, and I done went the other direction. But
That's all
sometimes
right. You be you.
sometimes you need inches. We can Samson and Delilah.
Yeah, you know what? Hair is is like, it's another. Oh, what? Girl, yes. I needed to be the end of the week because I can't even get my words together. Hair is an accessory, and you do whatever you want to do with that accessory. So, you want to have inches today, you have your inches, and I'm gonna have my coils.
Indeed, and tomorrow I might have my coils. That's the beauty of Black womanhood. We can do that. We can switch it up. We can change the color. We can do all things. I mean, because we are all things. I mean, just putting it out there. So, as I said earlier, this is National Women and Girls HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. Why is this conversation important to you? I think you're the one that actually suggested we talk about this month. So, why is this important to you? And what you want? What do you want to achieve today?
I will say, whenever we can highlight Black women, our needs, make us visible, I want to do that, right? And so I think when it comes to our health, literally, I'll just step back a couple of seconds. I'll take a few steps back. We, meaning Black women, oftentimes are put on a shelf. So all of our needs, concerns, or want, or take a back seat. And so whenever we can put us up front and highlight areas that we need to continue to recognize and bring light to, attention to, and awareness and knowledge, I want to be a part of those conversations. And this is not only we have today's day, but is Women's History Month, right? Yes. And so this is also an opportunity to just highlight women, Black women, our needs, our wants, our concerns, and we just need to not. It's just an important topic, and we just need to bring it to the table. And it's full circle for me. When I was in graduate school, actually my manuscript, there wasn't a dissertation, but I can't even think what it was. My thesis paper was actually on the stigma related to HIV and Black women. So wow. In that project at that time, when I was writing, it was like no one, it's like no actual Black woman with HIV was going to talk to me. Right. So I had to I got a lot of my information through counselors and educators who worked with women, actually doing a group, I want to say through THE clinic many, many years ago. So it's just like full circle. Has always been an interest, and it continues to be an interest. And it continues to be an area that we need to continue to move the bar on, just with so many other issues as it relates to Black women.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think for me, there's a personal sort of interest in this topic. I had a family member probably 10, 15 years ago tell me, hey, I'm HIV positive. And it really impacted me in such a profound way that around that time I did AIDS Life Cycle. Took me, convinced Jackie, our friend Jackie Provost, and a few others. Hey, let's go do a bike ride from San Francisco to LA. Yeah, right. For a whole week. It's okay. It's only 545 miles. Come on, on a bike, like whatever, right? Whatever. And I won't ever do that damn thing again. But at the time, I think it was sort of my way of trying to really show support and solidarity for her and what she was doing, or my family member was going through, and also just to, learn more about what was going on. And recently I had the wonderful privilege to speak to a group of women for this particular day, National Girls and Women's HIV Awareness Day, and share my journey and give some words of encouragement. So always willing to help, always willing to support. you know, we have friends in the cause, Dante Morrison, Dr. Morrison, who works for APLA, you know, always down for helping folks out. And the fact that this thing is still going on 30 something plus years later is sad, but you know, there's glimmers of hope, right? They've cured 3 people, right? And this latest person is what I was told is a mixed race woman. And so there's like, wait, we might be finally you know, at the edge of a shift with this whole thing. So yeah.
I mean, there's like so many. I think my mom did insurance. She had friends when I was younger. Mm-hmm. So it's like I've touched it and been around it for a while. I used to volunteer at a hospice. So it's like, you know, we've touched it in different ways. But you know, back then, deaths, it was hard, right? So that's a hard cycle to repeat. And so, but even with that, when I think about this, Nicole, women were not talked about still. It was like, you know, it was still we're like in the closet kind of thing. But I'd gotten very attached to a Black woman at the hospice place where I was volunteering at. And so she really was, you know, and I was with her those last several weeks before her passing. But she has always had a place in my heart and will continue to have a place in my heart. And I think that might be part of some of the reason why I do some of the work I do.
Yeah. And earlier you talked about us being put on the shelf. And I think that leads to a lot of us not having a lot of information that we need. And I was, you know me, I'm always on social media. So I was on Instagram kind of scrolling around, and I noticed that someone was talking about PrEP. And I'll just use it as an example. And there are Black women like, we can't use PrEP. PrEP is not for us. We can't use PrEP. And other people were coming in, yes, you can. And I'm like, I didn't even know, you know, so there's still a lot of misinformation. There's still a lot of shame, stigma. People are still tripping about, well, it's the DL men, when it's like, no, when I look at the data, it's heterosexual contact. I'm like, no, that's not what it says on the graph now. So there's still just a lot of misinformation. Folks still taking penitentiary chances with their bodies. So it's like we got to do more. And again, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. If you're not at the table making, hey, wait a minute, what about us? Then decisions get made about you, and you don't even know nothing about it. And so I think that's part of what today is about. So we have some special guests that will help us navigate this very important conversation. Really proud and privileged to have them on. So Kwame, hey, can you bring on Bridget? And if we can get Rania on, bring her on too. But we're gonna start with Bridget. We'll see how we're gonna make this go, because I'm excited. But we're having some challenges. So, you know, folks, we just be, you know, so people will know that people might drop off or drop on, but we gonna push through. That's the name of my book, baby, and that's what we finna to do today. Okay. Speaking of that,
Black women do.
Somebody told me my book should be called. So my first one is called Pushing Through. Second one is called Push Through, and then they said the third one should be called Keep Pushing On. Something like that. So anyway, y'all. Side conversation. Okay. Hey y'all. Hi, Bridget.
Hey. What's happening? How's it going?
It's great. I'm so glad to have both of you here. Let's just talk about who both of you are, what you do. And then I got questions. Nonsa got questions. We got data. You know, the public health side, the MPH degree. Hey, incidence rates and all stuff. We got to talk through these numbers and really talk about what the issues are. So Bridget, tell us who you are, what you're doing, and then we're going to jump in. And then Rania, you can introduce yourself.
All right. So, hi, everybody. Happy Friday, Junior, Thursday, fun day, whatever you want to call it. I'm glad it's almost Friday. It's been a long week. So, I am Bridget Piku. I am a nurse. I live in Cathedral City, California. I primarily work right now with older geriatric patients, but my passion and my heart is in HIV nursing. I also happen to be a woman that has been living with HIV for the last 9 years. So I have an interesting mix and perspective on life with HIV, because not only am I a nurse working in the field, but I am a woman living with it, with that practical hands-on every day. This is what it's like.
Perfect. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you so much for being here. Rania?
Hi. So just in case y'all didn't know, I'm the one who's having the technical difficulties. So hopefully, hopefully I continue to show up clear for everybody. But my name is Rania Copeland. I am a SoCal native, and I like to think of myself as a lifelong racial and health justice advocate. I am the owner and principal at Equity and Impact Solutions, where we advance social justice and equity by resourcing organizations with the culturally humble skills, tools, and knowledge they need to meaningfully center health, gender, and racial equity in their work. I've been doing HIV work for a long time. So I was at Black AIDS Institute for nearly 14 years, which is the National HIV and AIDS think tank. I served as president and CEO there. I sit on lots of HIV groups. I sit on LA's Ending the HIV Epidemic Steering Committee, and currently serve on the President's Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS. And so I get to see it from a federal level, locally, and HIV really has been my kind of work for a long time, because I believe that if we can respond to HIV, particularly in Black communities, we can figure out how to end health disparities overall, because what it takes to end HIV is really about equity and ending racism and homophobia and transphobia and all those things that impact our lives every day. So I'm happy to be here and have this conversation on National Women and Girls HIV and AIDS Awareness Day.
Awesome.
You know what, Nicole, real quick, because I'm a horrible human being and I always forget, because I get so excited and into the topic. I forgot to announce my affiliations, and it's actually really important to me. I am currently co-chair for the Community Advisory Board for the Well Project, HIV and Women. So this is a group that is specifically working towards women who are living with HIV and who are vulnerable to HIV, and they are a wonderful organization, and I really kind of credit them with a lot of my sanity and where I am right now. And then I'm also the president-elect this year. I'm the incoming president for my local Association of Nurses in AIDS Care chapter. And then I also sit on the board of a group called Heart PS, which is working with persons aging with HIV, because in case you're not aware, over half of the persons living with HIV are over the age of 50. And I'm about to be 50 this year. So that's close to my heart too.
Absolutely.
Come on, Skin.
See, okay, I'm like, somebody, Bridget, why are you lying? You are 25. I don't even understand why you over here lying, talking about you about to be 50. I don't, you know, so all of y'all be lying about your age. I don't understand.
Now my body is saying something different, because my body is definitely telling me I am over 50.
It's the knees, girl. It's the knees for me. It's the knees for
my
me.
left knee, I said, what I do? Why it's hurting? I don't even know what I did. But before we jump into the questions, one thing I want to say, you all mentioned your affiliations, commissions, boards, things that you're doing. Again, goes back to what I said. If you're not at the table, you are on the menu. You guys are all at the table and saying, wait a minute, this is where we need to focus our efforts. And again, it's really important to be in those spaces, because if we're not, then nobody knows. I don't know. I'm not going to say nobody knows, but I feel like stuff just kind of goes by the wayside, and it's like, well, what happened? So I'm really glad that you both are at the table. And Rania, I think my friend Dr. Moore is on that one of the federal one. That's my buddy.
Yes.
I think that my friend is on that one.
Yes, we're riding on it together. Got appointed both in August. So a great kind of cohort of folks to be on the Biden administration's update to his advisory council on HIV and AIDS. It's a really exciting time to be doing that type of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Nomsa, did you have a question or anything? Or you want me to keep talking?
No, I did have a question. It came up, I think, in some of the email threads with Bridget. Both of us mentioned, Nicole and I both mentioned, Black women a lot of times as it relates to health. And actually this topic specifically, we are invisible, right? We, it's everybody else but us, right? Mm-hmm. And our number, nothing is, we continue to have high rates, right? And so you on both sides, right? You're working and living, right? So I would love to hear from you, what you believe, the reasons why we are invisible, and what we need to do and what needs to be done to keep us in the forefront, right? And a lot of times I think we kind of talk a little bit about PrEP, and that's one area, but it really needs to be beyond just that. So love to hear from you more directly about that.
Yeah, so it's a good question, and it's one that needs to keep coming up so that people can keep answering it so that we can start addressing some of the issues, right? So you guys were talking about stigma before. Stigma is a huge thing. This perception of what are they going to think of me if I walk in and ask for PrEP? Or what are they going to think of me if I walk in and ask for an HIV test? That stigma, even 40 years later, is still prevalent, which is so sad. It is the fact that we don't have clinicians and providers that look like us, that we can identify with, because then you start talking about trust, distrust, and mistrust, right? And those two things, distrust and mistrust, are different, but they both tie into what's going on. You have factors, you have economic status, you have educational status. A big thing is lack of access, right? Which ties into, from the nursing part of it, one of the things that frustrates me is it's not just that we don't have providers that look like us. It is also that the general care practitioners who have the first opportunity, because by the time you reach an infectious disease doctor, it's too late. You're already diagnosed. We need to start involving the primary care doctors in the conversation so that they know what PrEP is, so that they know what the factors are. I hate the word risk. I try to avoid it at all costs. So that they know what the factors are that make people vulnerable to contracting HIV. So all of those things together, it's like a melting pot of a mess. But those are the big things that I can think of. And the ever-present, not going anywhere, structural and systemic racism.
I mean,
Yeah.
That's the elephant in the room. Rania, do you have any insight on that, as what Bridget was talking about?
I mean, Bridget laid it all out, and I think for Black women in particular, that what makes our experience so unique when it comes to PrEP and then HIV overall is that, when you look at the data and the numbers of who's living with HIV, Black women make up a small portion, right? That the majority of new HIV cases are among men who have sex with men, or same gender loving men, gay men, queer men, right? So that's who the majority of the numbers are. And so we see this huge focus on gay men, which in some cases makes sense. But it also doesn't speak to what Black communities in particular have been saying. And what we know is that you can't heal one of us unless you heal all of us. And so, Black women are disproportionately impacted when it's really uniquely so when it comes to women as well, right? And so when we look at Latinx women, when we look at white women, our number of new HIV cases is dramatically, exponentially higher, right? And we still don't see a huge amount of marketing for PrEP. We still don't see Black women living with HIV and thriving with HIV, which we know happens all the time, right? And I think that it's partially been because of this excuse that we're a small percent and by small, it's not that small. It's a large number of women every year who are impacted by HIV, right? But when they're looking at the ratios. But what they don't also understand is that Black women, we are the influencers of our community. And that when Black women know about PrEP, that means all the text messages, all the chats, all the family functions, everybody knows about it, right? And it helps normalize and destigmatize HIV in our communities, because specifically for Black folks, it's not about who you love like that. It's not where you live. There's not risk, right? It is literally just being Black and living your life. And so I think that that's why we continue to be invisible, because folks don't understand our community. Folks don't resource our community to be able to implement the programs that we know work for us, right? Which is not cutting us up, that we're all Black folks. When you're talking about PrEP, you're talking to Black women, you're talking to Black men, you're talking to all of us. And that hasn't happened enough yet.
Man.
Love it.
And you know what? You touched on something earlier about this download thing. And I actually just said this last night at a dinner. The fact that people still use the term, and I'm not saying you, I know you were just repeating what you heard people say, But the fact that people still use the term down low is all it does is perpetuate stigma. It perpetuates this lie, and it perpetuates this false sense of security about whether or not you can contract HIV. And we need to, like, there are certain things that I want us to just completely take out of the conversation as far as using, I hate the word infected, I hate the word risk, I hate the word down low. Like, it just, and I want us to start reframing the conversations and reframing the way that we talk about those things, because those are the things that lead to the number one reason that people don't get in care and stay in care, which is stigma.
Yep. Absolutely. Now we got to take a commercial break in a second, but before we do, Rania, you talked a lot about the data. I pulled some of the CDC data. We're gonna examine it. We're gonna look at it real quick. And then I do want to have this download conversation too, because like you said, I'm tired of it. It's old. We need to get past that, because again, I think it's a falsehood. Oh, well, my man ain't on the deal, I'm good. No, let's not have. So yes. So let's go on a break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to finish up this show. Woo, this is beautiful. And we're back. I don't know about y'all, but I was dancing. That was my cardio for today during the commercial break. Because that was hype. The music is hype. Pyro Media Network is hype. Proud to be a member of the Pyro Media Network, and you can catch this show once a month here on Pyro Media Network, or Pushing Through, which is the show I have with my 25-year-old daughter. Your relationship with your adult child does not end when they turn 18. We have those that kind of fill in the other weeks on Thursday. So check us out. All right, we back, because let's have the DL conversation, and then let's look at the data. And
wait. Go. Before you have the before the DL conversation, I want to bring something up really quick that both of the ladies have shared that I think is important, right? As we to continue the conversation, it's around, we're talking about stigma, but normalizing, because I think when we get to a place to normalize these things, then it starts to break down those levels of stigma, because until we get to that place, we then continue to have misinformation. We continue to have folks not put this issue as well as other health issues in the forefront. And so I think, however, we need to do that. And I think we talk about things in creative ways in different places, whether at the barbershop, the nail shop, the beauty salon, at family dinners, at family functions, at the park, in the backyard, wherever, right? In terms of having the conversation with the folks that need to have it. And also that helps, I think, with the reframing, right? Because if we start to talk about these things as they're part of regular conversation, then it's not this like, oh, let's talk about this in a parking lot, or, you're in a, I'm going to send you a message, but we're not going to talk about it out loud, or I'm only going to talk about it in front of certain people. Those are like those silos that we got to break through to get us on the other side. I just had to say that. Because I just think it's important to get us to that place. And I know that's not an easy mountain or rock to move, but I think the more we're consistent in that, I think it starts to tell a different story, and then we can show up differently as well.
Absolutely.
You know, one thing that's interesting about that, I'm sorry, is that the normalization of HIV testing is not where it needs to be. Like, for example, what is it called? Black Women's Learning Institute, or I think that's what it is, just recently did a study. It was a survey, 1,600 women, right? 38% of those women have never been HIV tested, never been offered an HIV test. So if you think about all of the times that you've been to the gynecologist, how many times has your gynecologist offered you an HIV test? I'm almost 50.
I can count on one hand how many times.
I've never
25 years.
I never had one offer me one ever.
3 times. I'm 52. 3 times when I was pregnant, another time later, and one and actually I asked to be tested, not because but 3 times.
So it needs to be, that's one of the places that we need to normalize testing, right? So we can't normalize what people consider to be the abnormal unless we make it a regular thing.
Yeah. And right quick, let me say this too. You'd be amazed at how much, I can't even, why is the word not coming to me? But some of our medical professionals have a lot of bias, implicit bias, explicit, other barriers that keep them from dealing with all kinds of things, birth control, HIV stuff, LGBTQ stuff, transgender. They don't want to do it because, well, that's against my religion. Baby, no, hold on. Then you in the wrong job. Mm-hmm. I don't understand. So, and I've seen it firsthand. I can't say who, where, why, but I know because I've seen some of the information on that. And it's really disheartening. It's like, but you're supposed to be helping people. First, do no harm. But, you're actually hurting a lot of people by not bringing these things up or, because you have a bias. Well, I don't believe people should do these things. So I'm just not going to talk about that. What the hell? It's people out here dying. What's going on? So I think that we also have to think about those things as well. What are our medical schools doing? How are they teaching? What kind of continuing education are we giving folks? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. No, I think that's true. Providers, you have so many providers, they're not comfortable with these conversations at all. They only comfortable with stuff from the waist up. They're not trying to deal with nothing below the waist if they can help it. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back again to what Bridget was saying. Just again, it's like, how do we, again, things that are normal? Because you're right. We shouldn't. You said never. You had never been offered a test. I think, Nicole, you might. So it's like, that's crazy. Yeah. That's crazy.
It is.
But it's common. It's common. Yes. It's common. It's common. And so, when you talk about things like PrEP, there's so many efforts we have to put in. First, we got to make sure Black women know about PrEP. You got to make sure that folks have insurance, like all these issues. But then once they get to the provider, like I've heard of so many stories of Black women saying, I want PrEP, and their doctor saying, you don't need it. Same thing with an HIV test, right? And so it is, the providers that we're talking about, like this is why ending HIV is a whole of society approach, because unless you respond to these, societal issues, unless you change these norms, it doesn't matter, right? You can develop all the biomedical tools that you want. You can, all the vaccines and the cures. That's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is the lack of education, the lack of awareness, the stigma that we have, the, patriarchal things that we continue to push forward, like down low, right? Which is really just about being homophobic and transphobic and thinking that, there's only one way of things to be when we know that we're diverse, we know that we're vast. And so that's the type of work that's going to get us to an end of HIV, which for me is exciting, but also kind of scary because it's like, how do we get there? How come we have people continue to die and it's our folks? Why are our people continue to be, hurt and impacted when we know the solutions?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
All facts.
do we want to do the DL or do we want to do the data? Which I want to do, DL or data?
It's your show, lady. What you want to do?
I'm asking y'all. All right.
So,
let's start with the.
I would say look at the data.
Okay.
That would be my that would be where I would want to start, and then we go.
Let's start there. Let's start there. Kwame. So here, this is national data, okay? This is CDC data, diagnosis of HIV infection among female adults and adolescents by race, ethnicity. This is trend data from 2010 to 2017. Now, you guys know I'm a professor of public health, so I would say to my class, what do you see here? What does this show you? And they'll say, well, there's a disparity here. It's like, that's correct. There's a decrease overall, yes, but there is a huge gap, right? That there are more Black women infected with HIV in this 7-year span of time than other races. They're kind of clustered at the bottom. So Kwame, can you show us the next one? I only picked a few because CDC, they give you the PowerPoint with everything, right? All sorts of ways to look at stuff. This is stage 3 AIDS classifications among female adults and adolescents from 1985 to 2017. So a wider time span. But again, what we see, disparity, that huge gap from between Black and everyone else. So we are very much disproportionately impacted. I'm using my big words here. Next slide. I feel like I'm at like a meeting, and then this is the one I think, and maybe you guys can chime in. This is the one where I was like, Black women represent 13% of the population. So they're out of all the people in this country, 13% of us are Black women, but yet we represent 58% of HIV infections, and this was 2018. Okay. And I think there's a question in the comments, but we're going to go next. I think there's one more, Kwame. All right. Yeah. So then here's, again, you see these gaps. But this is the one. And I think maybe this leads us into the conversation about the DL or not, where people were like, oh, you got to stay away from them DL men. And here it says for Black women, 92% of infection is heterosexual contact, 8% injection drug use, and then other is 1%. And that's higher than Hispanic or white in regards to the different types of infection. So the numbers don't bear out sort of this doom and gloom, oh my gosh, there's these secret men walking around with, I don't know, DL tattoo on their back. I don't know what it is, but we all are scared of this boogeyman, and it's not that. It's bigger than that. Next slide. And then this is, again, just another way to look at the data. AIDS classification, again, 2018, African-American women, 60%, I'm sorry, where everybody else is well under 60%. The next highest one is 18%. So 60, 18. And then it goes down from there. So those are the stats. Thank you, Kwame, for putting that up there for us. It's a lot, y'all. And that's not LA County. That's the United States. I don't have LA County. I didn't stop to look. So I don't know, Ronnie, if you have LA County data or are aware of the data, that if you want to give that insight, I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I mean, LA County trends, same as national. We actually have seen one of the biggest decreases in new HIV cases amongst Black women, amongst all women over the past few years. But you see it in a graph, the biggest drop is like this, right? And so we aren't coming down to the bottom, but it still continues to be, a significant disparity, like you said, right? So if we have some women who are down on the bottom with lower numbers of new HIV cases, why are Black women continuously being at such a high level, even though we've seen this drop in new HIV cases? You also showed, Nicole, AIDS deaths, which I think, during this time, this age, this doesn't make sense. We have such advanced medications now. And so and we don't even really say AIDS in this like we used to anymore, because we don't have it in the same kind of way because we have these medications, right? And so it's not, again, the HIV that's the problem. There's all these other things that are happening because we have medications where folks, can live long and healthy lives with HIV. It's the other stuff, it's the, not having housing, not being supported, or having a healthcare setting where you're being supported, all these other issues that continue to impact us. And then I think the last thing I would just say, especially for LA County, and this is actually across the country, we've seen an increase in new HIV perinatal cases, right? So women who are living with HIV, who are delivering babies who become HIV positive. And this is one of the things that, for many years we didn't see new cases of this because we have the medications, we have the strategies. Most women are going to the doctors to deliver these babies anyway, right? And so if they're not being caught there, what is happening within these medical systems where we're having babies that are being born with HIV when for years that hasn't happened? And so, it's a really kind of interesting time because, we talk about having the tools to end HIV. And when we talk about the tools, really it's biomedical tools, right? It's the billions of dollars that have been spent on medications for HIV that we have, but we haven't had that same type of investment. And what we know drives the disparity of HIV amongst Black women. And we haven't had that kind of focus that we know Black women need to have if we are serious about loving and caring for Black women and making sure that we're healthy and whole.
Yeah. I mean, I think you raise a big point there, right? There's the advancements, the investments, but if those advancements aren't targeted to the folks who need it, then only thing we're saying is we have it, we're just not doing nothing with it. And so it's like, so what does that, so again, what is that, what is that telling us again about how we are viewed, our value, our worth, right? When we have the tools and resources, but not getting them to the folks that's needed. And I think what you just talked about even kind of lines up with a question that we have. And that question is, do you feel supported by Black men, gay or straight, in your fight against HIV?
Oh, y'all asking big questions. Okay.
I was Dr. Morrison. That's Dr. Morrison.
We don't sugarcoat it around here.
Let me go ahead and tackle that question.
Boom.
No. I'm being silly, but let me tell you.
In sign language, no.
It's the no for me.
Because you know what? Part of it, and I'm going to say this, a lot of it goes back to stigma and perception, right? Yes. Because if I'm seen supporting you, that means I must have the same thing you have, right? So we don't get the support that we need from Black men overall in general, heterosexual, gay, what have you, because if they don't want to be perceived as having HIV. And then in the bigger picture, and it's not all men, it's not all gay men, and people always get mad at me when I say this, but this is the truth. Traditionally, HIV is an old boys club, right? Through no fault of their own, because of, like you were talking about earlier, Nicole, because of grid comments like that, and because of the way that AIDS and HIV were presented in the media back then, the face of HIV became older, white, or younger at that time, white gay men, basically, at the end of the day. And so it's their club. And so they get all of the services. They feel like they deserve all of the services, which they do, right? They deserve the same services that I do as a Black woman living with HIV. And that's where the disparity is. It's not that I'm trying to take something from you. I just want what you have, because my life is just as valuable. I want to have the same opportunities that you have because my life is just as valuable. You want to reach out to the men who can afford PrEP, right? So when PrEP first came out, it was marketed and targeted towards affluent white men who could afford the medication. Well, we have options now. There are programs to help you pay for the meds. There's programs through the drug company to help you pay for the meds. So that's not the issue anymore. So why aren't we stepping forward and moving and doing the things that we should have been doing all along? Right. So all of that ties back in together.
Yeah.
I'm glad you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rania.
I was just going to say, you mentioned babies being born with HIV, and it is a fact that women in general, Black women in particular, are diagnosed later in their HIV disease process, and we're sicker at diagnosis. Oftentimes, women find out that they have HIV when they are pregnant, or taking a pregnancy test, and that has to change as well. It makes the baby vulnerable. It leaves obviously the mother vulnerable, and it creates a whole other network of social issues, like you were talking about, for housing and how we're going to feed and where we're going to get our medication from and all of that. So we have to do a better job of testing and diagnosing.
Absolutely. Anything else we want to touch on before, we got about 5-6 good minutes before we close out. Is there anything else we need to be touching on? Maybe next steps. What should women be doing? Things that we can do, and what kind of advocacy work should we be trying to push forward? Because of course it shouldn't all be on the burden of women to try to fix this problem. But I know there are things that we can be doing. But I also want to, talk about bigger picture things. What's next? What should we be thinking about in regards to HIV prevention for Black women and treatment as well?
I think there's so many places that we can fall in, right? So there's like what I can do as an individual in my network. And I always say, pick 3 of your group chats and make sure you send some type of text message about HIV something at least once a week. Like, y'all got your annual HIV test yet? Hey, have you guys heard about PrEP? Oh, giving information really, making sure people know, literally. So I have like my family group chats, my nephews, like all these different folks that for me, there's an individual effort that I have around making sure people know about U equals U, undetectable equals untransmittable, right? So people living with HIV, if they are virally suppressed, not only get to live a long and healthy life, but don't have to have that burden and that worry of passing HIV on to others. And that's something that so many people don't know, right? So the 4 of us here and the people I'm watching, texting, having conversation at the cookout in the backyard, like you're saying, Nomsa. That's one thing that we can do as individuals that don't cost nothing, that we can do every day regularly. I also think that it's really important that we support Black-led agencies and organizations that are doing this work, right? So like in your community, send your big $25 a month donation. You got more than that, give. But really supporting organizations that are from community, that are doing this work, that are being the advocates at the table. And then I think there's like, where do you want your advocacy to be, like on a federal and state level, right? You want to, write our Congresswoman Auntie Waters and tell her what your priorities are. You want to make sure that the folks in her district office, which are actually really amazing when you contact people in your local district. They want to hear what you have to say, and you can ask them, where is this money? We have this whole huge federal initiative with hundreds of millions of dollars that is trying to end HIV in the next 10 years. And what we see are continuing widening disparities. White communities, other communities, they are ending their epidemic and we are lagging behind. And so how are those resources being used for our community, right? What's your kind of one thing that you want to make sure you pop up on with them when you contact them once a year or once a quarter or whatever that may be? And then the last thing I would say is that, that we continue to see new advancements when it comes to HIV technology, right? You started off with talking about like cure work when it comes to HIV. And there's all this amazing research, but how much of it is for us and in a way that we want it to be, right? So like there's been, we saw the FDA that went up for approval, having a ring that has HIV medications to protect against HIV, so like PrEP medications along with birth control, right? How many of us know about that and are advocating with the FDA to make sure that these are medications, these are technologies that need to be approved because they will help our lives dramatically, right? And so making sure that these billions of dollars that are invested in tools to end HIV actually work for us and they're things that we want. And so that's a list, right? You can pick from wherever you're at, what your day is, what your capacity is, that we all have a role that we can play when it comes to responding to HIV. And you pick, how you want to play that role.
Absolutely. Bridget, any parting thoughts, ideas for folks moving forward?
Self-agency. You are your own best advocate. Self-autonomy and sex positivity. because
Yes.
you have to get comfortable with your body, and you have to get comfortable with telling people what your body needs. You should be able to walk into your doctor's office and say, I would like an HIV test. And when you get the pushback that invariably comes, your response is simply, because I asked you. That's it. That's all.
That's it.
That's it.
The
That's all.
end.
And then, yeah. And then the other thing I would say is that we need to share more of our experiences and be more open about our experiences. But the people that we are sharing with need to be more accepting. Like, my whole thing is, I live my life just like I live my life. People who find out that I'm HIV positive are forever surprised, but it's because I'm living my life as it was meant to be lived, right? It was a journey and a process for me to get there, but I'm here. And the other thing I would remind people, because we didn't even touch on it, having a history of 2 or more STDs makes you more vulnerable to acquiring HIV. So whatever it is you're doing, if you're having a good time, which I hope all of us are, please be aware of what's going on with your body and get tested. It takes nothing to get tested. I never cease to be amazed at how people always say that they're not at risk and they're not worried about it. But as soon as it becomes, let's go get tested, all of a sudden they're nervous. Well, what you're nervous about? You're good, right? You know who you're sleeping with. You know your partner's status, right? No, nobody knows, because nobody's talking and nobody's having the conversation. So that's my thing, is be able to have the conversation, be able to have autonomy, be prepared for the answers to the questions.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, you think, oh, it's 2022. Everybody knows what they should be doing. All these resources are available, just go get tested. There are still people that just be either refuse, or just it's not on their radar, right? And so we definitely have to do a better job of normalizing and really, and something else that I tell people, even my daughter, like, you are responsible for your life. You have to make sure, that you're taking care of any interactions sexual with, you got to put that condom on. You can't rely on what other people are talking about, because our society has created a situation where people cannot say what's really going on. So they're not going to tell you what's going on. So you got to be, good on your end, because at the end of the day, if it's done, it's done. Chlamydia, whatever it is, right? And so, it's a lot. It's a lot that we have to really work on. So thank you both for those suggestions. Noam, so you got any closing thoughts on this conversation? I feel like we need to do a part 2. I feel like
I want to talk some more, but Bridget raised 2 things that I think are important. I'm glad she did raise it, especially talking about STIs and how that gets you closer to, and what that means. But I think it's just also the other thing I really appreciated what Bridget said, and just what resonated is just, we just got to talk about it, right? It's like, we just got to talk about it. And that just, it goes back to, if we don't talk about it, then, we stay where we are. None of us are growing. None of us are learning, because you're right. There's this assumption that people know. People don't know a whole bunch of stuff, right? And there's still a lot of misconceptions. People make assumptions about people. I was reading something on Instagram. It was probably a couple of years ago. And young man, I had a whole conversation about it at the time, but he had made a comment that she looked okay. She looked safe. And I'm like, well, what does look safe? What is looking safe? What is that? What does that mean? Because she was pretty. I just was trying to understand, like, you can't just go by what somebody looks like. You got to have those conversations. You got to, but it's also, we got to get folks comfortable with having those conversations, right? With the person you may be, whether it's a 1-night stand, 2-night stand, or whatever it is, right? Long, whatever, but being comfortable with having those, because your body is your temple, and you got to protect it. You can't rely on nobody else taking care of your temple, whether it's that provider that wants to push back on what you're asking for, or the young man or older man who's pushing back for whatever reason he's pushing back for, right? So it's like, we have to empower women to own their decisions and their bodies and what happens to their bodies in a very different way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, y'all. We gotta shut it down. This was amazing. Again, we may have to try to figure out to have another part 2 and kind of dig a little deeper in some of the other issues that have kind of come up. But as we part ways, I want to remind all of you that are watching to pick up a copy of one or both of my books, Pushing Through, Finding the Light in Every Lesson, or Push Through 52 Weeks of Light in Tough Times. You can visit my website, www.NicoleDVick.com. You can follow me on my social media. On Instagram is NicoleDVick. Facebook is NicoleDVick. Just type NicoleDVick and everything gonna come through what you need to see. Oh, and of course, my show with my daughter, Pushing Through, every Thursday. That's not the second Thursday, we have our show. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, ladies.